I want the Hinterland Who's Who song.
All right, welcome.
That's over the ending credits.
Welcome, everybody, to the Canadian Modelers Roundtable with the Plastic Posse. We've got quite a motley crew tonight for you. We're going to have a good time. We've got Doug, not Canadian Smith, joining us from the Posse. Say hi, Doug.
Hi, Doug. Hi. Hi. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
We have the only confirmed Canadian who ever sold his soul to the devil to be a better modeler, Chris Liftrom Sieber.
How's everyone doing tonight?
We've got.
I don't think I've received that soul yet. Actually,
it must be coming from Canada Post then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then we've got sporting a fresh and stylish beard from the western end of Canada, Robbie, the model guy. Say hi, Robbie.
Hey, everybody. I hope you're ready for the rush we're going to have this evening.
Very nice. Clean shaven. We have Mr. Chris Wallace, model airplane maker. Say hi, Chris.
Hello, everyone.
And the mastermind himself, the expatriate, as it were, Mr. Jim Bates, from joining us from the Pacific Northwest. Say hi, Jim.
I sure am. Oh, you said say hi.
Awesome. Well, we're just going to have a good time tonight, talk about what everybody's kind of been up to, and, what everybody is doing on their benches, whether it's above the border or below the border. So let's start out with Jim. Jim, what's been on your bench lately, and what are you kind of up to in your modeling world?
Well, not all that much. I spent last weekend chasing airplanes. And honestly, I think I said one of the subjects is, what are you dreaming about? And I'm dreaming about airplanes, and that's scaring me because there's nothing but tanks on my bench.
Awesome.
So I've got a 35th scale Sherman. I've got a 35th scale Chieftain, and I got a 72nd scale Firefly. And I'm just thinking airplanes are what are on my mind. So I don't know. I'll probably start 8 of those that I won't finish either.
Well, you see, you start with tanks and you start getting fever dreams about airplanes. That's what you get for it.
There you go.
I'm thinking, I know we promised not to talk too much about hockey, but I'm thinking maybe it's Jim's hockey depression that might be leading into all this armor modeling. What do you guys think?
Well, I don't know. Does he still identify as a Habs fan? Or is he forsaken that as well?
It's worse. I'm both a Habs and a Kraken fan. Only the worst 2 teams in the league.
Oh, I totally forget that there's even a team called the Kraken.
Yeah, it shows how good they are.
Yeah. Well, that's what you get for rooting for those freak expansion teams.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, Chris Wallace, what's been on your bench? I mean, other than writing some pretty awesome blog entries as of late, what have you been up to?
Well, that's very kind of you to say. I will show you what I'm doing. It's kind of heavy. Hold on. Oh.
Whoa.
This thing is freaking massive. So it's taking up a lot of space and a lot of time. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's a standard Revell kit, so it's going to require a little bit of finessing, a little bit of modeling skill, if you will, compared to what I'm normally used to. But I'm having a lot of fun with it, and it's just a great plane. And I'm looking forward to writing up the thing that I'm going to write up about it, because I already have it in the back of my mind what I'm going to say.
Nice. Very good. Very good. It looks like quite a project, especially compared to some of those little teeny tiny airplanes Jim likes to build.
They're over in a weekend, those things.
Maybe your weekend. Apparently, I just am so mismanaging my time because, like, Chris has a real life. He's got a daughter, he's got a wife, he's got a job, and he's claiming you could do them in a weekend.
I'm not saying I'm going to do them good.
Well, I've never built a good model in my life, So.
So are we going to have a discussion later on how Chris is going to make a black plane look good?
I think definitely. All right, Robbie down there in the corner, obscured by comments.
That's right.
What have you been up to?
Well, I've just finished that 135 Elephant, which is definitely out of my realm where I normally build. So it was exciting to change that up and build something with tracks instead of wings. And now that the video's been edited and it's been uploaded, I've brought my Sea King project back to the bench, which is fitting for the Canadian roundtable we're having here because there's no 148 Canadian Sea King on the market. So you can get the Hasegawa one, but you do have to modify quite a bit to beaverize it. So include some shorter sponsons, some different equipment inside, and the inside's completely bare. So there's a lot of room there to have some fun, do some scratch building, whatever floats your boat.
Is that the official term, beaverize it? For Canadian conversions?
How long have you had it on your bench, Robbie, and has it crashed yet?
No, it's doing better than the Sea Kings did for flight hours compared to maintenance hours. But one of the big things is Belcher Bits, which is a Canadian company, actually offers the upgrades for it. But you can tell those molds are getting a little dated, so there's been a lot of sanding, cleanup. And I'm probably going to drill out some of the inspection holes and 3D print some stuff to fill that in, just because it's more detailed than the soft resin stuff.
Well, that elephant is looking terrific, Robbie. Great job on that. That's a good subject. So,
thank you.
Luftdrum, what have you been up to?
Well, I just finished a commission build of a P40N for the Burman Banshees there last week. So I'm flooding Instagram with photos of that right now, and straight back into the Arma Hobby Mustang, which is another commission build that's getting done, is Princess Elizabeth, which I guess was a bit of a special scheme that was done. I guess Princess Elizabeth at the time was doing an inspection of an air base, and so they painted a plane up specifically to honor her, although I've since read the pilot wasn't too thrilled about having this plane called Princess Elizabeth. So I'm working on that, and I also have an Albatross World War I plane, which is a build for the same guy, which is being done in a Bavarian checker camouflage pattern. So I've been struggling to get the silhouette printer to do what I needed to do, and I finally new blade and some tweaks, and it's finally, I think, getting to where I can manage to pull off that little checkerboard pattern in 1/72nd scale, working from a really bad scan of a Wingnut Wings decal set and trying to adapt it to fit the Edward kit. So, and when I can, I'm going to try and get back on that Spitfire I had going there a while back, and with any luck, have it ready to take to nationals.
That'll be excellent. Doug, I know you're not Canadian, but what have you been up to?
Well, got the 3D printer for my birthday, and I've been doing a lot of printing, mostly just busts right now, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings stuff. But what's great about that is you get a print started and you can go to work on anything because it takes hours and hours to print something. So last week, just to kind of bring the mojo back, I started the Space Battleship Yamato Cosmo Zero by Bandai, and that's been a lot of fun little kit.
So
all right.
Paul Hayward brings up a good question in the comments. Who can 3D print me the Rocket Richard or Guy Lafleur figures?
Do I have STLs?
I have no idea.
We might have to put Jim on skates and get someone to 3D scan him, and make it happen that way.
I don't know, but we don't need anybody with ankles going like this.
That'll be me. Yep. As I think I've disclosed to most of you, the reason I had to leave was I couldn't skate, and it was in all the papers. Bates boy can't skate, family shamed, had to move to America. That's my origin story.
That's what we do with them.
I have a question for the Canadians. I'm kind of confused by something, and maybe just don't understand. Graham, just a while back, says "Go Leafs." Now, I see a lot of comments about Canadian hockey, but I've never seen such a love-hate thing about a team other than the Toronto Maple Leafs. Is it you either love them or hate them there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny too because the Leafs, if I understand properly, is probably the second highest grossing franchise in the NHL for money they bring in for sales and stuff like that. But Canada, it's in the East. I know it's between the Leafs and Habs, and then out West it's Oilers and Flames, and that one gets pretty bad too because it's the same province.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, the Leafs to me feel like the New York Yankees of hockey. They're in the big town. The media all is behind them. And they do really good with their press. Like, you'd think they have the greatest players in the NHL. Now, those two are on the Oilers, but, whatever. I just don't get it.
They're missing something, Jim. What's the difference between the Leafs and the Yankees, Jim?
Championships. See, I had somebody say, well, the Habs are the Yankees of hockey, and I'm like, only with winning. The Leafs otherwise are the Yankees. But I was watching, I guess it was the Tampa Bay Maple Leaf series, and I can get a CBC feed, and I assume it's from BC, but I don't know where it comes from. And they're like, all of Canada is rooting for the Leafs. And I'm like, no. There's some people in the GTA rooting for the Leafs, and everybody else wants to see them lose. So I don't get it. I guess it's just the power of media.
Yeah. Well, as we like to remind Leafs fans, as Hab fans, so we've at least watched our team win the Stanley Cup in color.
Right.
Right. So, and as far as Graham's comment goes, Graham actually lives in the same city as me, and I'm sorry, Graham, I don't know if we can do those beers anymore. Don't know if I can have you on my property.
I grew up not too far from where Luft is sitting in Oshawa, and I was always a Habs fan. So, but then I also grew up in the 70s when a guy by the name of Harold Ballard owned the Leafs, and there may not be a more dysfunctional owner in the history of sports.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, and that's what always struck me as a kid living in Toronto for a while, who actually went to a couple Leafs games in the 80s, and being shocked that they could be scraping the basement of their division or the season, whatever. And that place was full from top to bottom every night, right? Any other team in the league, as soon as the team starts to tank, the fans go away. Yeah. Not in Toronto. In Toronto, they still showed up, and it just struck me as, this is bizarre, right? Like, if they suck, pull your money away, make them do something, but they don't. So they just keep trotting out the same crap. So,
the Leafs logo is mediocrity since World War II. I think it's on their badge.
Oh,
sorry.
Instead of even the podcast email for viewer mail this time, I was going to just send it to Jim.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's scalecanadian@gmail.com.
Direct those to scalecanadian@gmail.com, and I won't respond. But hey,
complaints.cbc.
We can ask questions that we're all dying to know. Like if we put Jim and Cornbread both on some skates, who's going to win that race?
Cornbread.
Yeah,
exactly.
The battle pug. Our money's on the battle pug.
Yeah.
I love how every photo of Cornbread just makes it look like he's saying, "Why, Jim? Why?" It just has this sad just sense of pity that, oh, Jim.
Well,
why?
I'm really worried. They say odors start looking like your dog, so I'm going to be one weird looking dude in a few years.
Well, at least you can't reach your own balls to lick them, so you're good.
Yeah, yes.
Oh man! All right.
I know we talked on the back end. Sorry, go ahead, Scott.
For those of you out there that aren't Leafs fans or that we haven't driven away from the live stream yet, go ahead and submit your questions. We're going to have a lightning round at the end of this called Canada, What the Hell? And all of our panelists will get a chance to respond. We'll talk about probing subjects, such as oh my gosh, what's the name of the band that Nickelback? There we go. Nickelback. What the hell?
Triggered.
Tim Hortons. What the hell? So anyway, let's start.
I hope everybody studied up on their pig war history, because that'll be a question. And then Chris was telling me and I didn't know this, there is an island in, I think, Gaspé that Canada and America are still arguing over who owns it.
But they're not really arguing all that vehemently. It's more of a passive argument between the two. It's kind of funny, actually.
Well, is that like the island that Canada and Denmark are fighting over, where it basically just means they each go and drop a bottle of their native liquor or something like that on the island, plant their flag, and then sail away? And then 6 months later, the Canadians show up, leave a bottle of whiskey on it, and sail and put on the Canadian flag. And
well,
it's pretty much
the person in the comments who just mentioned Canadian bacon, they need to Google War Plan Red. It was the, and I forget when it was, but it was the American response to an invasion by Canada. And I can't remember if it was a preemptive invasion or if what was going on, but I think it was like if too many comedians became Canadian on Saturday Night Live, the U.S. had to invade. I think that's what it was, something like that.
Maybe a friendly invasion after all. Very friendly.
I think Chris told me he's surrendering when the American troops show up, and he'll be like, "I'm glad to have you, our new overlords."
All right, it looks like we've got a Plastic Model Mojo fan wants to know what everybody's drinking.
What do Canadian modelers have at the bench for drinks? I usually just stick with beer.
I'm doing the requisite Crown Royal and Coke. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm usually Kokanee or Schooners.
I will admit I have no modeling fluid on the bench because I thought this was a different podcast. I thought this was the Posse, not the Moj. So,
yep, it looks like Darren says your sound's going in and out there, Jim. So,
all right.
Well, I wanted to talk with IPMS nationals down here in this other country, kind of coming up really quick. Talk to you guys about model shows in Canada and sort of, what the big ones are and which shows that you guys look forward to the most. So, Luftrum, let's start with you. What's been your experience with shows up there, and when are we going to get a big, huge Canadian nationals kind of show up there?
Well, as opposed to America, which is relatively evenly settled, I think it's hard for Canada to declare that one show is the nationals.
Yeah.
Right. By what I've heard, the show at the Canadian Warplane Heritage Museum tends to be, I think, probably one of the largest shows, but you don't get people flying in for that like you do for U.S. nationals.
No.
And so that leads to situations where I think, it's really what's the biggest show in that part of the country. And I mean, that part of the country is literally every province. I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, basically every province we have is bigger than Texas. So, it's a totally different scale of things. So, Heritage Con is the one that I look forward to. Torcan's another one that's happened here in the past. There's a few other smaller ones. There's other small ones that are related to more specifically to cars. But just because of the size, I'm not as familiar with what's happening in the rest of the country. I think Alberta, Robbie, is pretty well. You've got a number of shows that happen there. Yeah,
we do, and they're usually pretty small. They're not as big as when you talk about Heritage Con, because that's one out east a lot of people know about. Here they usually run 2 shows every year, and they're kind of small in nature. They just run out of the Legion. And they're probably on par with like when a club does a show.
Yeah.
The bigger one would be when they do it down in Nanton at the Canadian Bomber Museum. They'll actually get, I think last time they did it before COVID, they had about 600 entries, and that's considered a pretty big show. And then I think in Edmonton, they do one every second year as well, which is almost scale. But again, outside of Alberta, you wouldn't really know about those shows. Like, to be honest, I don't know of anything in Saskatchewan or BC just because it's so large and far away that if I wanted to go, it's either a 13, 14-hour drive or a $700 flight.
Yeah. Well, and as Wayne just said on the message there, we also have alternating shows. So there's CapCon in Ottawa, which you just mentioned, and then there's also one down in London, Ontario, so those two have gotten into a pattern where they will typically alternate. As far as Heritage Con goes, I mean, it draws people from the United States. As they were announcing awards, I recognize a number of names that I know from the U.S. And we also get people from Quebec, but like if you're coming from Quebec or you're coming from anywhere in the sort of northeastern United States, I mean, 5, 6, 7 hour drive is not unheard of. So, it's a pretty good haul to get there. I mean, that's halfway to Omaha. So, and I'm sure. Go ahead.
And out here on the West Coast, IPMS Vancouver has a great show. That's the one I look forward to the most because it's the only one I can get to. I've been to Heritage Con and it is awesome. And I think it's probably the biggest show in Canada. This is not me putting my official IPMS Canada hat on, but I don't think there's much motivation within IPMS Canada to have a nationals like they do in the US. They did one in Ottawa, I think last in the 90s. And we're a pretty small chapter. I think there's like 4,000 IPMS members in the US, and IPMS Canada, I think we're hovering around 500. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty spread out, diverse group of people. And the other really interesting thing as an American is 90% of IPMS Canada members are not affiliated with a chapter, that they're independents. And I find that really interesting that Canadians don't group together because, there's a few of us here.
Now, Heritage Con, that runs for a couple of days, doesn't it? It's usually the whole weekend.
It's one day.
One day. I think that's one of the limiting factors as well, because let's say I'm going to fly to Ontario, if I want to make that effort to drive and pay that money, I would rather go to something that's going to be on the level of NATS, where it'll be 3 days, lots of vendors come in, and while you're there, you can also see other stuff going on in the city. Whereas if it's only 1 day, it kind of cuts down on how much model related stuff you're going to really see.
Yeah.
I went to the last Heritage Con, and that's where I met my good friend Chris over there at Left Rom. And this time, because of the pandemic, and I know we're not supposed to talk too much about that, but the amount of vendors was astronomical compared to other years. So if that's what you're after, if that's what you're looking for, that's probably the biggest show in terms of vendors that I've ever seen in Canada.
Well, I know Ivan shared that link a few days ago of all the vendors going to NATS, and I know that's a national show, but I'm pretty sure there was more vendors going to NATS than there are Canadian model clubs put together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of my questions I jokingly asked you guys is, what's your favorite Canadian model company? And I want to back that up. How many active Canadian model companies are there? Belcher Bits, who's already been mentioned, Leading Edge Decals in I think Calgary.
Yeah.
There's I'm trying to think. There's one more
in that group. Can we do that?
What's that?
Can we count Kinetic, because they are releasing Canadian stuff?
Right. No, but I mean based in Canada. It's Belcher Bits, Leading Edge, and Ultracast, right?
Yeah. Even then, I think Leading Edge may have gone under because their site, nobody's been able to contact those guys for a few months now. And that's a huge hit because he was supporting Kinetic in a lot of their stuff they were doing. He did the decals for the Canada 150 jet, and he also did all the Canadian decals. So I don't know what's going on there. And Belcher Bits, that's like a really small one-man show.
Right. Well, so is Leading Edge, and what I know about Leading Edge is he's like a graphic artist full time, and he just does decals in his spare time. So I think it could be not that he's gone under; he's just got paying work.
That's true too. I know there used to be Canuck. I think it was Canuck Decals was another one.
Yeah, he went under. The other one that sort of exists is Aviology.
Okay.
But I haven't heard from Terry in a while, so I'm not 100% sure what he's doing. He's done some books and done some decals, which are awesome because their instruction sheets are mini books.
Well, I can tell you for sure that Belcher Bits is there. I was actually at his house 2 weeks ago, and just down, it's 15 minutes away from me. He does, actually, it's incredible how good the resin that he puts together. So if you're interested in Canadian stuff and conversions, the resin is top notch.
And David Knights says, don't forget Hussar. Are they making stuff, or are they just a
good question.
Are they just a distributor?
I don't know.
But to the best of my knowledge, and I would love to be corrected, there has never been an injection molded plastic kit done in Canada. There have been vac forms for sure and resin kits for sure. And there was a Canadian company called Hobbycraft Canada, but they did all their stuff in Korea and China. So that's always been my question. Has anybody ever actually tooled a kit in Canada?
I don't think they've been a production run kit, no.
Yeah,
And it's
even
funny because
even
those
short run or
Hobbycraft
anything.
tutors, even like the 172 tutor, which back in the day you could buy that for $6 at a museum or air show. They go on eBay and model groups for like $75, $100.
Oh, it's insane.
Like,
It's
if anybody's listening out there, like Kinetic, Airfix, Edward, if you want to do a tutor, there's a demand there for it.
Well, this is where I get the benefit of living in the US, because whenever old Hobbycraft stuff gets donated to our club, people are just handing it to me. And I kind of want to sneak it across the border, put it on ebay.ca and make big money. Because down here, they're basically like, nobody knows what a de Havilland otter is down here, but I'm sure I can turn around and sell that kit for $100.
Those arrows, I don't know if it's just because it's the arrow and there's such a following, but I've seen one of those go on eBay for $280 for the 148 kit. And I was like, that is unbelievable. Because again, that was one of those kits that back in the day, you get it for $20, $30.
Yeah.
But because it's in production, it's sought after. Like, honestly, you'll see guys put 6 of those on the Canadian Facebook buy sell group, and it's just like they won't settle for less than $100 starting out.
And that's a $15 kit if there ever was one.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Does
Chris,
anybody know?
$9.99.
Does anybody know if there's any interest in the Hobbycraft tools? Anybody considering picking those up, or does anybody know?
I don't think it would be worth it. By the time you put the money into buying those tools, cleaning them up, I don't think there'd be enough of a demand. Because I think
it would be an interesting question, though, if someone got a hold of whoever has the IP of those things to do a small print run. It'd be an interesting question to see exactly what that would cost and what the benefits would be, because there would be a market for it for sure.
There is no question that some of the Hobbycraft stuff went to Academy. There's also a big question of who tooled the Chinese stuff, because it just disappeared. And one of all their second tool arrows were done in China, so who knows where they are? Maybe they're in the basement.
Well, the other thing too is that it's a case of there would be a demand, but how long will that demand last for?
1 month,
right? Once you flood the market, that's it, right? Because the second part of that equation is we don't have the same number of people here who have any inclination to build those things, to even know what an Avro arrow is, what a tutor is, right? It's that pool of people compared to even 15 or 20 years ago has shrunk so much that you would get through one round of them and then that would be it. So
be a single run and that's it. You're right.
Now, what I would love to see is somebody step in and do 3D printed versions of those.
Yeah.
All right. That's where you could pull that off, is to do a 3D printed version of those aircraft, and they would actually look decent, but I can't ever see really that kind of subject being done in injection molded plastic again.
Well, it's interesting though when you think about it. Some of the stuff we see from like TACOM is doing a 1/72nd scale German bomber.
Was that the Silver photo?
Existed. And it's the second plastic kit of it. So it does make me wonder why we're not going to see these things. And I've joked for 100 years that I'm going to start my own model company. Our first kit's going to be the Fleet Fort. You can look that up. Our second kit's going to be the Avro Anson. And our third kit's going to be Bankruptcy. And I think that's the problem with Canadian subjects.
Yeah. Because even the stuff we've produced, like military-wise, we did fly the Tracker, but we built those ourselves. De Havilland Canada built those out of Quebec. So I was surprised when Kinetic even did Trackers and offered the Canadian variant, the S2F, because the Americans flew the E, so there was really no one else flying the F. But when they dropped that, that blew my mind, because I didn't expect to see that in 148 plastic ever.
Well, Robbie, you just started a big war. They built them in Downsview in Toronto.
Oh, sorry. My bad.
But the question I will ask is, do you know, where did they build the Sea Kings? Because I know those were built in Canada, but I don't know where. Was that Quebec, or was that like Armprior or something?
I have a feeling it's Quebec.
Yeah,
It was,
everything now is built in Quebec. That's
a
on.
long time ago. I think it was Lower Canada. That's what they called it. At the
Oh, that could be when they built them, yeah.
Yeah, I
That said,
wanted to
go ahead, Scott.
sorry, apologize. I just wanted to go back to, all the unaffiliated IPMS members. Chris Wallace, I know I think it's one of your more popular videos. You did kind of a swap meet video with your local club or one of the local clubs there. I mean, is there participation, at least in the larger cities? I mean, what's it like up there, you guys?
That's a hard one to answer. So I've been part of the local IPMS group since 2019. And that video that I did was it was completely unaffiliated. So I would say in Ottawa, at least where I'm from, most of the people that I know are not affiliated with a local club.
Robbie, what's it like out in Calgary in that area?
I know the one club I used to be with, there was a couple people in the group that were affiliated with IPMS, but I think it was maybe the 2 or 3 people minimum we needed for a club.
Yeah, and up here it's kind of the same thing. There is, like, Peterborough used to have 2 hobby shops. We have 0 now. Aside from Graham, who's chipped in with a couple comments here, who we sort of discovered each other back in the fall on Instagram, and there's another fellow who I've known for a number of years who builds here. I don't really know anybody else who builds here. There's a club in another smaller town 45 minutes away. There's another one, I think 1 or 2 groups that meet at a hobby shop in Whitby called Daily Hobbies, which is sort of my local hobby shop, and that's it. I mean, to the point where, for Graham and I, who have kids and jobs and lives and stuff, and an hour and a half in the car can be a challenge. It's even like, should we even try and scrounge up 2, 3 more people here to have the bare minimum for an IPMS club here in Peterborough? So yeah, it's pretty thin. I don't know if that's sort of a marketing issue, that it's not reaching people who build kits, or whether it's not inclusive enough of perhaps people who build Gundam, or but like in a city of 80 something thousand people with no hobby shops, it's hard to get people involved in that kind of thing, and then furthermore to get them involved in a club.
But Chris, would that be pretty much the same thing in the States as well? Like, I'm thinking that I don't think it'd be any different in terms of, it'd be massive in terms of amount of people, but in terms of unaffiliated, affiliated model builders, I think it'd be the same type of ratio, wouldn't it?
I don't think it matches, though. I think a lot more IPMS USA members are club members.
Okay.
And I don't know why that is. I think that there are a whole lot less, and hopefully I'm sounding better, there are a whole lot less IPMS clubs in Canada, and maybe that has something to do with it. And technically, there, until recently, was no requirement on how many IPMS Canada members you needed to start a club, and we had just put that into place in the last few years. I just think it's, Canada's a big country. There's a lot of solo modelers, and I think Americans tend to gather more. And, if we think about it, IPMS USA's biggest draw is a giant convention. So you've got people meeting that way, as opposed to nothing like that's really going to happen in Canada. One year, the IPMS Vancouver guys invited their local Gundam club, and I'm not sure that Gundam club didn't have more members than IPMS Vancouver.
Nice.
What about other groups like Paul Hayward just mentioned, AMPS? What any local AMPS clubs that you guys are aware of?
Yeah, there's one in Calgary. I think it has I know there's about 30 to 40 people on their Facebook group. And I usually, when they do their show in September, they have a pretty good turnout at that. But to be honest, I don't know where they even meet, because there's no information really out there. So maybe one of the biggest problems is they're just not advertising it, or maybe it's a select few that get invited.
And around here, tank builders intimidate me, scare me a little bit. So I don't really want to hang out with them too much. But I do know there are a couple of groups, and they're quite prolific. I just leave them over there, and they leave me over here, and everyone's happy that way.
Hey, Chris.
All right.
Chris.
We're gonna touch all the bases. The hockey bases. The sorry, Jim. The aircraft versus armor base. All of it.
I was just gonna tell Chris stop being an ass. Oh, never mind.
I'm an aircraft modeler, Jim. I can't help it. I'm born and bred. Sorry.
But you are a Canadian
And by
aircraft
the way,
modeler. So where does that leave us on the scale?
It's about 85% asshole about that.
So we're less of an asshole than aircraft modelers of other nations. Okay.
Oh,
Oh man.
there's our second
Remember?
polarized comment right there.
Everybody remember, hate mail goes to askalecanadian@gmail.com.
All
Yeah,
of
it's funny,
it,
that's
every
the big-
single ounce of it, all of it goes there.
And by the way, I feel embarrassed I didn't think about it. They are decals, by the way. I don't know what these decal things are.
My favorite
I
Canadian
find
thing is decanals. That's a very Canadian thing that I've heard. Ever heard
That
that?
must be an Ottawa thing.
Oh, it's
If I had $1 for everybody that commented on my videos, not to push my channel, but 1 in 3 comments seems to be it's decals, not decals. You're saying it wrong. I'm like, hold on a minute here. Don't judge it off me because I probably have one of the weirdest accents being from the East Coast and growing up in the fishing village and now being out west. But depending, like in Canada, you'll get both pronunciations. You'll get decals and decals, whoever you talk to. And there's Americans that do the same thing. So I don't know if people are just got their blinders on and pretend they don't see it, but I'll just apologize now because Canada, like especially in the East there, we have the Scottish, English, Irish, French, and every hodgepodge in there. And Halifax is a mixing pot. So there's a lot.
And then on top of that, there's Newfoundland.
Oh, but that's its own thing.
Now,
We
Chris,
don't talk about them.
how do people up in Ottawa, especially those who are French, how do they pronounce it? Because the etymology of the word is décollage.
or le decal. It's one of the two.
Oh, so they don't. There's no A sound on that first E.
No.
No.
There you go, Paul Hayward, decals.
Hi. Oh boy.
Hello.
I'm so glad that somebody else's kid doing that first. Having 300% chance to be kids in the video.
Sorry about that.
Who had
God,
Chris Wallace at 20-1 to have the first interruption on the stream? I think I had a 20
I have
on
to
that.
direct you to Zach's comment, and I want to know if that's true or not.
No. Do we some of these comments?
Oh, I've got knights complaining about my posture. Thanks. Thanks, Mom.
Oh man.
All right, so let's go to kind of since this is supposed to be a round table, I'm going to start with Jim, and I'm going to let you guys go around the circle. Everybody gets to ask a question about anything they want. So, Jim, what's your question? Who do you want to ask it of?
This I've got to ask somebody specifically. Well, then I'm going to go to something that was mentioned before, and I'm going to ask the model airplane maker, how is he going to make black look interesting?
You stole my question.
I did. Though, okay, then I'll steal Robbie's question. For anybody not named Luftram, what is your plan to get better? What inspires you to get better? Because I've given up, and like I've said, I just sold my soul to Luftram for a bottling talent.
And I'm still waiting for it, so you're still suffering.
Yeah. You got to make the trek to St. Catherine Street in Montreal.
Actually, most of the times I've been on St. Catherine Street have been fun, but there wasn't much bottling going on. So.
No, you might lose your soul.
I don't really remember many of those days.
Yeah, that's Canada's Vegas, just to kind of straighten that out for everybody that might be wondering.
All right, Doug, you have a question? Or let's make Chris answer the first question Jim had. So, Chris, how are you going to make a great big blackbird look interesting?
The first thing you do about painting black is you don't paint it black. So that's the key thing about anything with black. So, like I learned a few years ago with a Korean Corsair, and then a little bit later with an Apache cockpit, is the best thing to do is you do not paint black. And I'll put it together, but really it's all about layers of different colors. It's about transitions between colors. But if you want to paint something black and make it look interesting, don't paint it black.
That's good advice. What do you think, Jim?
I think it's awesome. I have a friend, and this is going off Canada. I have a friend from Ohio who painted a night fighter bow fighter, and he did black without using black. And he just layered clearer colors. Like he started with, I think he started with maroon, and it just looks so good. It wouldn't fit an SR-71, I would say, because it's a little more World War II. But yeah, it was impressive. And just watching him do it, he's very clearly one of those artists. Well, he's an architect in real life, but one of these arty people that I don't understand. I think he understands what the color wheel is. And I thought it was the thing I flew the plane with, but apparently it isn't. So, well,
I went to the U.S. Air Force Museum a few years ago, and they have an SR-71 there. And I also saw one, I want to say in Washington, but not really sure. If even in extremely low light, where it's black everywhere, when you look at the actual airplane, it's not black. It's kind of strange, but it is absolutely not a black airplane when it's in its naked form, when you really look at it. So it's going to be an interesting experiment. I hope everyone's going to follow along and enjoy it with me. But yeah, don't paint it black if you want to learn how to do it.
All right, let's make Chris ask a question then.
How many of you are regretting ever touching social media as a modeler? especially YouTube. Because I tried to start going down that path, and if there's another 6 hours in the day, I'd think about it.
Yeah.
But there's not. And I just, when I sit here and think about how much I have to do on the bench, not even thinking about everything that life demands, the only way I could ever see making it work is to do like Mike Rinaldi does and do stuff that's just pure life.
Yeah.
Right. And just leave it at that. But for the rest of you, I know you all do social media and video to varying degrees. Are there regrets, or do you kind of feel like you're in it now, so you have to keep trucking away at it, or?
Yeah, that's definitely the feeling, because with YouTube, it gets to a point where the analytics demand that you put out more content to stay relevant.
Right.
And for me to do a video, like the one I've just finished, that took 2 full nights of editing. So about 8 hours to edit it, polish it up a little bit, and upload it. And when I'm sitting there doing that, I would rather be building, because that's quite a chunk of modeling time. And on the other side of things, I'm not doing it for money. I just enjoy getting it out there, knowing people are watching it and maybe learning something. But when it comes to the other social medias like Facebook and Instagram, I like that those are so integrated that I can take a couple shots at the bench, throw up a quick word, throw it up there, and get a pretty good feedback from that. So anybody that's thinking about getting into YouTube, be ready to grind at that. The guys that are doing it every second week, I don't know how they're doing that. I'm lucky to do it once a month.
Now, have you found anything that you're, maybe if you were to leave YouTube, you would gravitate to? Because I feel like we're in the same boat. I would never put stuff up to make money, but I love having stuff out there that spurs conversations and questions and learning. And often in explaining a lot of that, you learn more about it yourself, right? It's rewarding on a lot of different levels. So what would you look at outside of YouTube if you were to ditch that?
I would copy Will's idea, and in fact, I am doing that on Patreon, because planning probably towards the end of June, every second week, to hosting a live build session where we just sit, we build, we talk. There's a lot of feedback. There's no outside noise going on, and it's just a great opportunity for everybody to learn. And the thing about Patreon is there's a lot more mediums there. You can do blog posts, you can do your Instagram posts and go over to that, and it's a lot more flexible than YouTube, which is kind of like just doing your videos, and there's a lot more cleaning it up before you can post it. Whereas Patreon, 20 minutes, you get a post up and you can move on.
So I question this all the time. I'm still trying to figure out what made me put on a tie-dye shirt and start talking to my camera about models. There's just no reason to do it. And I've been really open that, I'm not going to monetize this, because who would ever pay for shitty content? And
The CBC.
yeah, the CPC. Okay, so it's true. I'm just trying to get a movie deal. That's all I want. But I for about 100 years have wanted to, and I probably said this on one of the pods before, make a movie kind of like Dog Show or Waiting for Guffman, or I'm forgetting the other Christopher Guest movies about modeling, because nobody believe it. But I find myself, I've been finding myself struggling to do more content, because I wonder, why am I doing it? And all I can really figure out is I kind of do it to amuse my friends. But I thought about doing build videos at one point, and Scott was kind of hot to trot to get me to do that. And it just kind of, it feels like, is this a lot of sunk cost for very little benefit? And kind of like the rest of you, I enjoy discussion. I enjoy all this stuff, but I being kind of a business owner, I'm trying to think, is this a good use of my time? And would I rather be at the, bench working? And I agree with the Warbirds and Scale. I do want to see the Luft-Rom instructional videos, but I fear, like, it's interesting. Luft, you're mostly an Instagram guy, when the three of us below are kind of YouTube. Mighty Win, that's what it was. Thank you, Graham. So I just kind of wonder, like, I've had a blog for 100 million years, and I'm not motivated to sit down and write much anymore, and I'm not sure what any of that is. And I'm literally in awe of Mr. Model Airplane Maker in the square next to me, because he's doing, well thought out blogs. He's doing videos. He's got a kid. I think he's got a real job. Like, I heard he's a lawyer or something, and then he actually finishes models. So I'm amazed. Does the guy not sleep? And kind of looking at our messages, maybe he doesn't. So.
Well, Chris, what's your response to that?
Yeah, Chris, what do you have to say?
I do work. Occasionally I do good work. At least they keep paying me. That's what the card says anyway. In terms of, I'm no prolific YouTuber like Robbie here, but I think it's really about what you want to get out of it. And what I wanted to get out of it was so I'm, full cards on the table. I'm a lawyer. I have a pretty straight-laced job. I can't get too creative during the day, or else people go to jail. So if I am a little bit more creative in my evening hours, that's a great creative outlet for me. Models is one part. If you notice about my videos, I say a lot of things that are not model related, and I have a whole lot of fun doing it. So if people enjoy what I'm putting out there, my commentary on society, my commentary on whatever happens in terms of the culture, that's what I'm going to do. If you're looking for an in-depth, out-of-box review of model sprues, there's other people that will do that much better than I can. If you're looking for smart aleck remarks along the way in terms of showing you a couple of little techniques that I've come across, I'm your guy. So definitely come on by. And the same thing with my blog. So it's like Jim said, it's really what you want to get out of it. And it's a creative outlet for me. Not in it for the money. I'm in it for my personal amusement, the amusement of everyone on the screen here and anyone else who wants to come along for the ride. And I welcome to have anybody comment back or ask me anything. It's a sharing thing. It's me giving back what I've benefited so much from so many people along the way since I've taken up this hobby. This is my way of giving back, and I enjoy doing it. And I think everybody here wouldn't be doing this if that wasn't the actual end goal. I mean, there's other things that we do, but the end goal here is to give back and enjoy or spread the enjoyment that we've enjoyed with this hobby.
Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say that to me is really what it is about. Is, I came to Instagram, as Jim pointed out. Instagram's sort of where I made my tent when I came back to the hobby 4 years ago, because I figured, being the visual medium, that's where I would get sort of most up to speed on how the hobby had changed and where it was at and where it was going, what people were doing. now, I mean, 4 years on, yeah, it's great to scroll through and see great stuff. But what I really like is the dialogues that you start with people, having people who are on the journey as well, and that you can help give your little bit of knowledge to. I mean, I just helped somebody that, they had never used decal setting solutions. And, so over the last week or so, like, we've just sort of been going through that on Instagram direct messages. And, from the first transaction we had 3 weeks ago where, a decal was sort of completely silvered, and, he's like, would Microsol and Microset help this? And I'm like, absolutely. Let's walk through the process. And going through and just having the conversation again, like I said earlier, like, when you sit there and explain it to somebody else, it causes you to evaluate that process, to not leave out sort of any steps, and you sort of get to critique your own process in the same way. And he just sent some photos through the other night where, he took decals and they just look absolutely painted on. And, I think he's happy. I'm thrilled to see that kind of progress from somebody like that. And, just that opportunity to, I think to like Chris said, like, we've all learned so much from this hobby, and a lot of it is before the age of social media.
Yep.
And so now it's a way for us to start turning that back around, right? And I think we absolutely need to do that if this hobby is going to continue to grow, continue to thrive, especially in a place like Canada where it's been in a slow decline. We've got to, and obviously Instagram and all these things are global, so it doesn't matter where people are writing from, but we're stewards of this hobby. And so we have to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to make sure other people are enjoying it to the same degree that we are.
Yeah.
So sorry, go ahead, Scott.
I agree with that. I mean, for me, the best thing about social media, it's easy to line up and complain about all the things you don't like about social media, but the great thing is what you've been talking about, Livestream, which is just that collaboration. And, Doug and I, we basically became friends over this hobby, and this was decades ago. And now, this call is a great example. Jim's in the Pacific Northwest, Robbie's up in Alberta, on and on and on. And I know you guys, and I get to talk to you, and I follow what you do. And so it takes that concept of collaborating with people who share your passion and love for this hobby, and get on a message and say, oh man, Chris, how did you make that little tiny Millennium Falcon look like that? That was amazing. Help me, share with me how that happened. Robbie we were on a build session with Robbie the other night, and in between cursing at the hockey game, he was talking about weathering the Zimmerit, and we had, John Bonani was on there, a couple guys that do German armor, and it's just that power of collaboration is, for me, is what makes me want to do this. Because you're right, Robbie. I mean, and all of you have made the comments. This takes a lot of time, but it also brings so much back, at least to me. And Doug, I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on this. You've been a little bit quiet here, but how do you feel about the time that social media takes and impacts your hobby?
Well, I'm not involved with like YouTube or anything. I'm watching it. So that's great for me. I get the benefits without having to put the time into it. But when I see what other guys do, when I see what the potential for this hobby is, I get excited. I think I want to try to do what they're doing. And then I also have access to talk to them. As Lufstrom pointed out, we've got access to people who are perfectly willing to spend their time helping us along, and that we can learn from. And I've learned from a bunch of people now. I've met people from all over the world thanks to this. I may never see them face to face, but I know people that otherwise we'd never know. Wayne just said the same thing. We know people because of social media. Just it's an amazing experience. That's an amazing thing to have. It was funny last night, my daughter looks over at me and says, how would you feel if 40 years ago you would have known you were going to be doing what you're doing right now? Which in this case was, we were watching a show about Obi-Wan Kenobi. you know, and on TV. And I happened to have, you know, I was a little distracted. I was looking up 3D print files, and that would have blown my mind too. But I know about most of this. I mean, Obi-Wan I would have known anyway, but 3D printing and stuff, this is because of everybody else out there. Everything that I've learned about it is because of everybody else out there and who's taken the time to share it with us.
Well, and the other thing.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Jim.
I was going to say the other thing that I try to do in my social media is we want to all build community. We want to do this, but in a positive way. And I think one of the things I see in this hobby, even online, is a lot of negativism, a lot of people putting people down. Like I was on Instagram the other day and saw somebody complaining about the color of a guy's olive drab. Like, this is not what really matters. It's about, or you know, Robbie doesn't know what Japanese colors are or whatever. No matter what you do, there are always people who want to be negative. And what I just want to do is have an inclusive community of anybody can build whatever they want. And do it in a positive way. And I think, you know, not to, you know, make Scott, you know, blow up Scott's skirt too much, but I think that's one thing the Posse's done a good job of, is just be enthusiastic about the hobby, be positive about the hobby, and not need to drag it down in minutia. And well, the minutia is great, but drag it down in, you know, what would make somebody go onto somebody else's model and say, oh, that's the wrong color or whatever. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. But the other thing I wanted to circle back is Jared, I think, put up a post about Chris and Robbie's history is what draws him in. And what I've been considering for my channel is do straight history stuff. Because Scott accuses me of being a researcher more than a modeler, which is true. And I've got all these crazy, weird pieces of information in my head. I also know a lot of old guys who were serving and were involved in aviation research, and we're slowly losing them. And I guess what I'm thinking of is it worthwhile doing videos that are solely, you know, here's the topic. We'll talk a little bit about models, but it's mostly we're talking about the Hawker Hurricane, or another one I've been thinking of doing is the Flit Fire, which was a bunch of Piper Cubs bought by the Royal Air Force Benevolent Society to raise money. But how to tie that all back into modeling. And that's, I guess, what I haven't quite figured out, or I'm lazy and I just haven't done what Nike says and just do it. You know, because Robbie and Chris are lucky because they actually finish models. So it's real easy for them. Let's build a model and talk about it. I don't finish anything, you know, so it's harder to talk about. So I'm just trying to figure out, how do you work in history? Because I kind of feel like I'm one of the few people who care about history, and it's one of the things that drew me to Robbie and Chris's stuff before I knew them, is they're talking about history. This is awesome. I'm not the only guy who cares about this stuff. So I'm just trying to figure out how to work that into what I do, because I'm not going to sit here at the camera and lecture you. I don't know, Hawker Hurricane, they built 1,840, but how do you do that in a fun way? And as we saw even setting this up, I have no graphic arts ability. I'm still laughing at what Luftrom put together, because that's way better than anything I could think of.
Well, if I can chip in on what you said, Jim, I don't think you need to finish kits in order to make them relevant to history. I think actually the better thing is, you know, to talk about unique aircraft or unique aircraft in certain national services and simply touch on what's available out there. I mean, because how many times have we seen photos in books or on the internet, and you see this aircraft? I mean, like Tank Planes is one place that I subscribe to on Facebook, and every so often you'll see amazingly weathered, filthy aircraft, and they're not often or always in the service of one of the major nationalities. So there's a history aspect to, okay, well, like, what is the unique history of some of these aircraft, and then what is here's the finished model, but what is the modeling potential for that, right? I think the other part of your thing just needs to be researching scale mates, right? If this interests you, I just picked up a few books on Canadian Spitfires and Canadian seaborne Canadian aircraft. So essentially any aircraft that was involved in sort of Canadian Navy or Canadian coastal operations, which of course is going to be in a bunch of unique aircraft. So if I'm interested by what I see there, what is the realistic potential that I will be able to model one of those things? So I don't need to see you finish it. I just need to know, hey, wow, that was really cool.
Right.
I'm
right.
hooked. Where can I take this now as a modeler?
And my normal response to that, and Robbie was once the beneficiary of that, is Robbie's building a Sea Fury, so he ended up getting 100 pictures of Canadian Hawker Sea Furies, and I'm just trying to figure out how do I put that into YouTube. I'm always sending Chris Model Airplane Maker stuff. I think he's kind of tired of it, but he gets angry when it's not Corsairs, and there's not a lot of Corsair stuff. But that's originally what my blog was about, and it's easier to do that in writing. But I guess I just need to figure out how to create a slideshow that's interesting.
Well, I think that's where. Are you familiar with the naval video blog Drakenafell?
Yeah.
I mean, look how well that does.
That's true.
And all he's doing is posting pictures and talking over them.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, a good example that's probably relevant to you is, we've been talking about building Stocky Edwards P40s,
Mm-hmm.
and that rabbit hole the other day, and I think you've even maybe sent me a few pics of Patricia Bay P40s. Well, there's the one that they took up Vancouver Island, I think, on a barge of logs, and there's a picture that I found of the plane on a floating barge of logs. I now want to build that. I want to build that plane on those logs. And so what's the backstory to that, right? What do I need to, and I think I finally figured out it. I think it's a Mark 1 or something. But like those kind of unique photos. Okay, well, I see that. I want to build that. Tell me as a historian, because I suck at researching history, what's the backstory to that? What's my potential of realizing that photo, that aircraft, that kind of thing. I mean, I think if you had a blog that did that, it would be fantastic.
Well, maybe there's my first topic. I'll do that. That's her Kitty Hawk, because I know all about it.
Tell you what, I'll build a plane for you.
Airplane a couple of years ago, because it was in Madras, Oregon for a while.
Right. Yeah.
So it still survives today.
It was bought for $50.
Yeah,
I can't say
crazy.
that I'm a YouTube absolute expert, but the two things that seem to always recur in terms of popularity are engagement and storytelling. So, Jim, if you can get a good story, something that someone can really sink their teeth in, especially you, and you have a certain passion for this thing, that will really resonate with people, especially if you get them through some very interesting story, get them from point A to point B. And on the other side, if you're interested in doing some videos that have to do more with techniques or building, it's actually interesting how some of the more popular videos out there are people failing at things and not getting there, and then you see them building their way to the success. It's not like, here's how you do it, I'm the expert at everything. Interestingly, a lot of those videos people don't watch. What really people like is how you start completely screwing something up and then getting to the point where you have success. Those are actually the most popular videos out there. And I've made everyone extremely quiet.
I'm just wondering what's going through Jim's head right now. Jim's either figured that he's hit a gold mine or he's hit a total roadblock.
Actually, so here's the thing. I've hit this great idea that I'll never do because, as Mr. Knight said, I'm lazy apparently. So, But
that's not
see, I've used on my Scale Canadian TV the fact that it's easier to just go watch hockey. Well, hockey's kind of over now, So when the Oilers win the cup and bring it back to Canada, I'll be done, So
I'm still upset with you, Jim, that you haven't used my suggestion to ultra meta and start at the mountain and see if your apartment is visible or not. I think
do not ruin it. It's going to happen. It's still the spring here. The mountain isn't even out yet. It's pouring rain. I need nice weather. That'll start July 4th.
Fair enough.
Well, we have a bunch of Canadians here who are stereotypically polite. I know one thing we wanted to talk about was the article that Dukes wrote last year now, actually, think about it, and that was the Airplanes and Assholes one he released, and that caused quite the stir. And for those who aren't familiar, basically his attitude was, in Cole's Notes version, he found that the armor community was more supportive, helping each other out, and accepting of things that were done. And the aircraft side of things, we were more aggressive in criticizing each other and bringing each other down. And I thought that'd be a fun thing to address, because I know I have seen that on other forums. Like I've seen on the Tamiya page, a guy built an F-16 in 1/32 scale, looked fantastic. I don't know much about the F-16. And I think the second or third comment down, this guy just started ripping into him. Oh, you're got the wrong intake on there, the wrong this, the wrong that, and nothing that was constructive to the guy's build. And I just wanted to throw that out there to you guys to see what your opinion is or experience has been with that, because I know I've seen it. So I just wanted to see what the thoughts were.
I gotta go here. Shut up, Robbie. We don't care. No, sorry. Go ahead. Chris is our asshole expert. So Mr. Model Airplane Baker.
Let's boot Robbie from this whole thing, please.
Triggered. What's that one? Trigger words.
How do I respond? It's completely true. I wrote a couple of things a little while ago in terms of a response to this whole idea, especially there's a member of the Plastic Posse podcast, I believe his name is Ivan, if that's his real name. And he said some pretty inflammatory things about aircraft modelers a little while ago, and I took some exception to it. Since then, he has never responded to me personally. So I think that there's some unfinished business between he and I invite him to get in touch with me.
I think he's dodging you.
I think he is dodging me.
That's Yvonne.
Yeah, actually,
Yvonne.
to set the record straight, the comment came from a listener, John Bryan from the UK, and we read his comments and everything. But yeah, he was actually the one that kind of made those comments. So just in defense of the posse, we try to be nice.
Well, I'll try to be nice too, and I think that Ivan is an interesting man, and I'm sure that everyone's friends with him. I'm all kidding. At the end of the day, I think that we talked about this before, especially a few of us on this channel, and you're going to find this everywhere you go. You're going to find a certain small microscopic element of people who just take pleasure in knocking down others. And especially when I started on the socials, it happens every now and then. And if that's what makes you happy, if you come on to what I'm doing and make a comment, and this makes you feel better about yourself, then salute, good for you. I really hope that that it makes you feel better. But the vast majority of us out here that are doing this, we're not like that. We're totally supportive. We share. We enjoy each other's company. We enjoy doing this together and making better models. And all respect to Dukes, and I'm sure that he definitely can give examples of what he was talking about. I think that the vast majority of people out there can give you 10 times the examples that are the complete opposite of that. And
Buster, what are you thinking there? You look like you're deep in thought.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if, like, is some of this maybe rooted in the difference that these roles or this equipment occupies even in real life? I've not known a lot of military people. I've known a few people in the Air Force. I've known a few people in the Army. I can say that Army people generally tend to be a little more grounded, to use a pun. I remember stories of an aircraft mechanic who worked at CFB Trenton, who used to often service the Hercules aircraft they ran there. And he was constantly complaining that pilots would just take any aircraft they want and flew up actually to Peterborough here to our airport for lunch. There seemed to be from what I heard, this prevailing attitude that people who were involved with the Air Force were different, better. I don't know. I don't want to. I certainly don't want to start a war about this. I'm going by secondhand information, but I'm wondering if this isn't somehow related to how these things are perceived in real life. Right.
Well, as a pilot, we are better than everybody else, so it's probably got something to do with that.
Well, and it could be. I mean, like, does it take a type A personality to be a pilot? It probably does. It's probably why I never became one. And maybe that just filters down into the scale modeling thing, whether you're a real pilot in real life or whether, you know, I'm just throwing it out there that maybe this is art, you know, art imitating life. But
that's an interesting idea. I also wonder if it has a lot to do with traditionalism, and I hate the word gatekeeping, but I sort of think it fits in there too. Of this hobby is serious. Airplanes are serious. We got to make them look exactly like they're real. Whereas I wonder, you know, I've approached this, and I think I stole this from Night Shift, but tanks are a little bit science fiction in that you're not generally building one tank from a picture. You're building a tank that plausibly existed. And I wonder if airplane guys are just really wrapped around the perfection side. It's been in the hobby forever. It's the way it's always been. Because I remember, and you know, I'm not that old, but I remember guys talking about, oh, those are targets. And you see that science fiction. If it's not real, it's not real. It's not a model. And I think that's really interesting that's kind of lapped in. I saw something really funny. I think it was on the Interesting Modeling Company. They've been doing a Matchbox group build, and I grew up building Matchbox. It's what I could find in my town. And they posted up a review, and I don't know what magazine it came from, but when the first Airfix kits came out, and they talked about, well, they're molded in 2 colors. This may prevent kids from painting them. And I'm like, what makes you think, 1, kids are going to paint them? 2, they're not going to put princess stickers on them. And 3, you have to make it authentic. Like, is there no ability to have fun in this? And it almost seems like the aviation genre is, even what ifs are a little bit looked down upon, you know? So you got to be serious. And I think we need to get over that, because I think that drives people from the hobby. Whereas in the Gundam world or the sci-fi world, it's not as serious, unless you're Doug and the color of the Millennium Falcon. But other than that, you know, it seems like there's more latitude.
Jim, do you think we're giving this a little bit too much oxygen for really what it is? I just think
absolutely.
It's such a small minority of people out there. Maybe they're the loudest people, but they're not. They're definitely not representative of all of us. I really strongly believe that.
Well, I was also taken aback by something you said the other day, Chris, about your wife commenting about mother groups are the same way. There's always a couple people. And I'm like, oh, so it's just all aspects of life. Like, I thought it was mostly a dude thing, but apparently it's all aspects of life.
So other question, I guess, on this topic is, you know, I know in aircraft circles, certain people like to hold up their color chips for, you know, Luftwaffe colors and you know, RAF colors or RAL colors or whatever. I mean, I know those things obviously exist in the armor world, but I don't see armor people, you know, is there also maybe a, you know, almost a surplus of information that gets circulated in aviation circles that gives people the idea that they have ammunition to stand behind these comments? I mean, there was somebody posted something the other day, and it showed it showed an RAF bomber. Oh, it's Qatari models out of New Zealand there, and they had shown a Lancaster bomber in various state of maintenance, and so you could see interior green in sort of the engine bay, and you could see it in the cockpit, and you could see it, you know, all different places. And their point was, look how many different shades of interior green there were, and you know, and yet you have people who stand here and say, this is RAF interior green, this is it right here, which is BS, right? Because, you know, how was that thing printed? If it wasn't printed exactly properly, it's off. How was it photographed? It wasn't exactly photographed properly, it's off. How old are your eyes? Because if you're older, your eyes are not going to register color quite the same. Or you might, especially if you're male, there's a good chance you have some color blindness that you might not even be aware of.
Well,
So
and
we have all these factors that actually impact our perception, our recording, our portrayal of color, that really, once you start saying, like, this is the color, and you hold up a photograph, and to Katari's point, even on an aircraft, there could be, from different manufacturers, any number of different shades of interior green.
Mhm.
So to paint the whole thing is just stupid.
So
I would add a couple of thoughts. First of all, this isn't only aircraft modelers that do this. Model railroaders will do this. I mean, just about any group of people that model. And then the other thing is to sort of circle back to the headwaters of this discussion, which is I think maybe in the armor community, especially in social media, we have some very, very popular content creators that have a lot of personality. Uncle Night Shift, and a lot of other people. They're a lot of fun, and I'm not sure that maybe aircraft modelers have those sort of people that are perceived as fun. Maybe so. Does that impact this argument, or the perception is probably a better way to say that?
I'm gonna flip this table over. That's what I'm gonna do. I'd like to just go back with what two things that Chris said. So I think that there's two issues that, and it is a future blog post for sure. One is, I think that all of us, as we're going through this hobby, we get to that one point. So there's the point where we're just grabbing every kit, every piece of tester's paint, we're throwing it together, we're having a blast. This is that whole thing. We move along, we get along, and then at some point it's just like, it has to be the right color. I don't care what it is. I don't care where I have to find it. If it's in France, if it's in Russia, it needs to be the absolute precise color. And then we learn later on, it's just like, it doesn't really matter what you paint the cockpit, how precise it is. It's all in darkness, and there's a canopy over it. You can't see it anyway. So if you're reasonably close, that's all that really matters. And besides, you're going to weather it, you're going to chip it, you're going to highlight it, you're going to do all these other things. So the precise color that you needed a few builds ago really doesn't matter anymore. And to Lefram's point, those pictures that you see in references, on videos, and everything like that, it really depends on the elements, on the photographer, on the film, on the time of day, everything. Glossy blue, it is the most intuitive color that you could possibly imagine out there. And you line up 10 modelers and what they think and what the proper, original, perfect glossy blue, you're going to have 15 answers of what that's going to be.
Well, I'm gonna jump in, and I think I've told Chris this story too, but there is a Corsair sitting not too far from Chris, unfortunately in pieces right now. That when that airplane was restored, it was restored by a guy, I think, out of Illinois. It had been in Baba Black Sheep. It had been sitting around for a while, and they restored it. They spent a lot of money on it. They got actual chips and painted this Corsair, and then they took it down to the Reno Air Races to have it judged, and it didn't place because it was the wrong color. So apparently it happens in all aspects of aircraft, real life and small. And I would say that Corsair is looks like glossy blue to me, but what do I know? You know? And I agree with what Chris is saying, is there's no right or wrong. And I also think with the rise of weathering, that throws a whole new thing into it, because even if you start with the correct color, you're not necessarily going to end up with it because of your weathering. I'm sure Robbie can paint a lot of his stuff any way he goes, and once he weathers it, it's got a whole different look from when it's got its base colors on.
Yeah. Oh, we could be here all night talking about that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I think maybe that's the difference between the armor and the aircraft guys, is we can all look at our own car and see what it looks like when it's weathered. We have a reference right there. Oh, I've driven through the mud. That's how the dirt's going to sit out. That's how mud's going to sit on. Whereas most people, when they see an aircraft, you're seeing that from 200-300 feet away, so you're not seeing all that close-up stuff. And aircraft, and this is really going to set off the aircraft, aircraft have more of a beautiful, sexy appeal to them because they're sleek-looking, whereas a tank is like in the mud, smashing stuff around, and it's just a whole different mindset, I think, and that's what it comes down to, is when people are building those aircraft, they're kind of afraid to be wrong because they want to keep that slickness looking to the aircraft.
Right. Well, and as somebody who saw Top Gun recently, there's some really ugly hornets in that movie. It's crazy.
Yeah,
So, Mr. Super Hornet Builder, you're not off base. That's all I'll say.
Oh, mine, those 2 white Hornets I did are completely different colors.
Yeah.
I used AK Real Colors for the F, and then I used Mr. Color for the Growler, just because you'll see that with naval aircraft. There'll be different colors depending how long ago they were painted, how long they've been in service, elements they've been exposed to. It's just, as soon as an aircraft takes off, it's dirty. As soon as it's out of the hangar, it's dirty. It's leaking. There's stuff coming off it. And fortunately, a lot of people have never been on a flight line will never see that. But if you're a guy in a model group who, in your own mind, you think you're an expert on interior green, you're not going to accept that as a fact. You're just going to, whatever is in their head, that's the fact to them. That's what everybody needs to know.
Right.
And unfortunately, these are the loudest.
Speaking of interior green gray, I've got a piece of a mosquito wood out in my display cabinet. It's got 2 colors of interior green on a little piece of wood. And you know, one of the things that's interesting, especially airplanes that lasted long, is let's say your Corsair, and this isn't going to happen, but let's say your Corsair cockpit was all one shade of green. Once you start adding and subtracting pieces and different pieces get used, it's going to be all different colors. And I've been involved in the warbird world, and like I've seen T6s that we open up new old stock items, and the throttle's one color of green, and this is a different color of green, and oh, this piece has got Canadian green on it. You know, it's not uniform the way people believe. Like, just because there's a spec doesn't mean that happened in real life.
And it's interesting that you say that, Jim, because I've read where it's just a guidance. So some of these interior greens are a mix. It's black and yellow, and it depends really what the individual manufacturer subcontractor did. It's the green in terms of the guideline, but there's no one can of paint that they opened back in the 40s and painted everything. It was really subject to whatever they had on hand.
And as long as you don't paint it orange, you're probably okay. But if orange makes you happy, go for it. You know?
Well, wanted to talk about a couple things here before we start wrapping up. But the first thing is, what is the model that we need the most for a Canadian subject? What Canadian subject would you guys really love to see? And I'm going to start with model airplane maker Chris on this.
I want a perfect scale Canadair Sabre. It's been in 48 scale, the true scale. I want that done to perfection. That would make many people, the world, happy, really.
Man, talk about saying something that's going to get people upset. Is 48 scale is the true scale. Everybody's got a true scale.
Doug, but you know
people's opinion.
Doug, admit it now.
Absolutely, I agree. But
I know Doug slagged off 72nd scale early on, so we all know where he sits on this. On this
hey, 72nd scale is great when it's Star Wars.
Yeah.
All right, Luftrum, same question.
Well, I kind of alluded to it earlier. I would love to have a really good Avro Arrow. You know, I grew up with a fascination with that aircraft, and you know the potential that it had for us as a nation. And I had the Hobbycraft kit years ago, and I think it got half built, and then it just kind of disappeared as many kits did. But I would love to see another one of those come out, sort of along the line that Chris said, that, you know, is really properly done.
Yeah. All right, Robbie, you're up.
Just give me a second. I got a dogfight going on here. So I think something that I would love to see, and there would actually be a huge market for it, and I'm surprised it's not been done, is a new tool 148 Harvard/Texan. And the reason for that is I lived in an area where my interest is, we did a huge training scheme in World War II. Like most British or Commonwealth pilots came to Canada, flew in the Harvard, and there's lots around here for reference. And it's just a worldwide aircraft as well. The Americans used it. It was used all over the world, even post-war used them. And unfortunately, I think there's only one model kit out there for it, and it's an old Italeri one, who I believe they even reboxed somebody else's kit. So we're kind of needing that.
Jim, I'm sure you don't disagree with that.
I do not disagree with that, but I'm also the guy that I don't think any Harvard would make me happy because I know too much about them. we just got a 70-second special hobby rebox of the Academy T6 with some Harvard parts. And I remember writing a review of all the things that were wrong with it. And then I have another friend who's a maintenance guy on Harvard's, and he sent me even longer list. I am on board with the Sabre. I'm on board with the Harvard. The Harvard's a good answer. I still, and I'm going to take another trainer because I go the slightly less traveled path. I'd like to see an Avro Anson 5, which was a Canadian version of the Anson, which was all plywood fuselage. I think the chances of that happening are zero, but we are getting an older Anson from Airfix, so at least we can get the British one. And then I'll put in another vote for the Fleet Fort. It's the only Canadian-built aircraft during World War II that was designed indigenously. And it's ugly and awesome, and it's got a face even its mother couldn't love.
All right. Well, I want to go around the room as well and talk to you guys about your individual. We talked about social media before, but maybe talk about the channel, what's happening, and anything coming up that you want to talk about. Robbie, let's start out with you. What's new on your channel, and what's something to look forward to?
Well, I'm pretty much pretending I'm back in university. There's been a lot of experimenting going on. I just finished a tank, which is something different. And after this, I think I might actually do my first car for the first time in about 25 years. Oh. I know Salvino's just released that 2022 NASCAR. And one thing I find a lot of car kits lack is detail. So that's right up my alley, especially as a mechanic. So I'm excited to do that. And I think with the patron side of things, that whole every second week build thing is something that's going to be fun to look forward to, because it's just going to bring people together to talk and just socialize. So that'll be fun for sure. Where can people find your content? So I'm on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook as The Model Guy. I'm on Patreon as well as The Model Guy, and I'm usually pretty active on those. So you can find me there, contact me through there. I'm pretty open and try to get back to people as quick as I can, but sometimes life gets in the way, especially with this training years coming to a close for the military. So if you do send me a message, I will get back to you as soon as I can. Awesome. Okay, right. What's new for Model Airplane Maker, Chris?
So the next video is going to be painting a Blackbird, not black. And then after that, I'm going to be doing a couple of things in terms of some skills, such as painting pilots. So I'm going to be painting pilots the easy way. So not like as detailed as, say, a figure painter, but someone in terms of an aircraft modeler who wants to put some pilots in. I'm going to have a few tips about that. So I'll have a video on that. My blog is modelairplanemaker.com, and you can find me on YouTube at Model Airplane.
Awesome. What about a Scale Canadian TV, Jim?
Well, Scale Canadian TV apparently only posts now when I go on trips, but I guess I learned tonight I'm going to be doing some history videos that tangentially relate to modeling. I should do another episode. I've just honestly not been at the bench much, and I need to fix that for no good reason. One of the things I do notice, and I was just complaining about our weather, is as the summer rolls around, I build less because I'm outside. And when it's nice here, it's hard not to go outside because we don't get all that many nice days. But yeah, I don't have any plans other than apparently doing something on a P40 on logs in the near future. And I'm going to then use this time to break with everybody else here. And the one topic that we really do need a model of that's Canadian is the Ferret armored car. I don't think there's ever been an injection molded kit of this at all. And it appears that armored cars are the flavor of the year. So, tack on, come on. Enough with fake Luftwaffe bombers. Let's get a 172 or 135th Ferret armored car.
Sounds good.
You should send all your research to Copper State.
Yeah,
there you go.
There you go. That's who would do a really nice job of it.
It would, but I think it's a little out the arena because it's post-war. It's post-World War II.
That's true. That's true.
And there's a reason for this, and I'm going to go armor again, and I'm actually going to throw a shout-out, is I grew up in a town called Oshawa, and when I grew up at our airport, we had a Lancaster, a Sabre, and a Harvard. Hold on, we talked about all those today. and they started a little museum they called the Ferret Club, and they had some ferrets. That's now the Ontario Regiment Museum is having their big tank weekend coming up soon. And I wish I was closer to Oshawa because I would go to that to see all the tanks running. So they started out with 2 or 3 ferrets, and then they got some Shermans, and now they've got all the tanks.
Thanks for that reminder.
Yeah, a Keno tank weekend.
Yep.
Luftdrum, what about you?
Well, like I said earlier, I'm still plugging away on some commission builds, so my channels are pretty much just chronicling the ups and downs of that. I had a few missteps with the Arma Haba Mustang and the invasion stripes in the fuselage because the stars and bars have a little white hairline that goes around, and I had missed including that when I masked it off, so I had stripped it right back and just actually finished repainting it today. And I'm just continuing to look at ways and topics of things that I can bring to people to help explain what I'm doing, to try and key on the things that people are talking about. I mean, photography is one thing. The photos that I had just posted of the P40 with sort of the darker background, which is a bit different for me. I've had a few people say that's really cool, and kind of asking questions, and it's like, well, it's just 2 IKEA lamps and a piece of poster paper. So, just trying to come up with, I think, some stuff that sort of walks through some of the things that maybe I take for granted. So that means paying closer attention to what people are saying and why they're asking the questions they are, and what can I do that will sort of shed some light, again, no pun intended, on what they want to know. Maybe some point this year there'll be some YouTube stuff, or maybe I'll even try dipping my toe into Patreon. But I think for me, it's largely just steady as it goes, and just keep putting the stuff out on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. All of them are at Luftrom72, and and just try and get through a backlog of some of my stuff, and just try to keep it interesting.
Get that Spitfire back on the bench, right?
Yeah, I would love to. I looked at it the other day. There's a lot of dust on that. It's got a lot of weathering of all the wrong kind.
Doug, how about that perfect grade Millennium Falcon coming along? What's next for you on your bench?
Oh gosh, I need to wrap up a couple of builds for Nats, mostly the group builds that I'm involved in that we're entering for the Triple P and for the Geeks. And for now, that's kind of it. Other than when I have a little bit of free time and I want to do something different, I'll play around with some stuff. The Falcon will be done by the end of the year, but I just don't have the time to dedicate to something that size right now.
Yeah, I hear you there. Well, one of the projects I've been working on, to go back to something we talked about briefly, is just collaborating. And Jim and I and another gentleman have been doing kind of a 72nd scale armor build together to just kind of collaborate on how to weather and how to shift color and things like that. So I've been working on that. And then I also have a group build entry for IPMS Nationals in Omaha. Hopefully, I know we're not all going to be there, unfortunately, but hopefully I'll see as many of you there as possible. Really, really, really looking forward to that. And
Chris, are you going to Nationals?
Unfortunately, but that doesn't mean forever. And so I will get there again, and I really want to go again, but I won't be going this year, unfortunately.
That'll be a bummer.
Yes.
Robbie,
Go ahead. Sorry.
any chance you're going to be there?
Not to Nats. We're kind of trying to buy the house in that this year, so that's cutting into finances. But next year, I'd like to at least come down to some of the other shows. Like I'd like to see the one that Jim puts on at the Museum of Flight, because that just sounds like it'd be a great time, and I really want to see that museum. That's on my bucket list. And I think Commie Fest as well, because it sounded like you guys had such a blast there. So I'd have to figure out how to do that. Maybe push out a couple commission builds maybe to pay for it. But I think Lufrum's got the market cornered now in Canada for that.
only the little planes. Only the little planes.
We'll see what we can do. Now, at least to get down there once for something to be fun.
Well, it's been it's been a lot of fun this year with shows already. 2022 is going to continue with IPMS Nationals next year. Hopefully, we can get to some shows together. That would be great. I'd love to go to the Heritage Con, get up there and see that one, and kind of come to some of your turf up there as well. That would be great.
Well, we'd love to have you, Scott.
That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome. Very, very awesome. And
Jim's coming back to the homeland possibly this summer, I heard, potentially.
Yeah, my plan was to get up to Nanton for the model show, and that's not going to work out, but we're probably going to do a trip to Nanton in September.
Yeah.
And before we wrap up, Matthew is my new favorite friend because he says, how about a Bricklin? I have wanted a Bricklin since I saw one as a kid. I'm sure it's a crappy car. I still want one. Like, I want to be the only guy driving around Seattle, not in a Tesla, but in a Bricklin instead.
Just don't drive in the rain, Jim.
Well, I won't.
Jim gets to drive it 2 days a year.
Yeah, exactly. My summer car.
Well, for those of you that have been listening, appreciate you. Appreciate all the comments along the way. All these guys are terrific modelers. They've got great content. Hopefully, if you guys weren't familiar with them before, you can go check out and see what they do. But they're all terrific. They're all inspirational. So check out what they're doing. And we'll do some more lives moving forward. In the meantime, gentlemen, enjoy. Thank you so much for joining us, and hope to talk to all of you again real soon.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks a lot.
And remember, kids, if you're being chased by taxidermists, don't play dead.
Canadian dad jokes. What a note to end on.
This is why we don't get called on very often.
That's right. Yeah. Yep. Hey, Stuart, it's great to see you. Thanks for your comments. Hope you're feeling better and doing well, and hope to talk with you soon as well. All right. Take care, everybody.